You prayed last night, but all you heard was silence. And now you're wondering if God ever really listened at all. Maybe it wasn't God who disappeared. Maybe it was you who stopped believing He was there in the quiet. We mistake silence for abandonment. We confuse the void with rejection. But what if the most terrifying truth isn't that God is absent? What if it's that He's been there all along, watching you rage against the emptiness He never created? This prayer isn't for those who have their faith figured out. This is for the ones who are barely holding on, for the ones whose knees are bruised from begging, for the ones who have screamed into the darkness and heard nothing echo back. I know what it feels like to pray and feel nothing, to open your mouth and wonder if the words are even leaving your lips or just dying in the air between you and a ceiling that feels like concrete. You've done everything right. You've fasted, you've confessed, you've worshipped through tears, and still nothing. The silence is so loud it suffocates you. It wraps around your throat and makes you question everything you thought you knew. Was it ever real? Did I imagine His presence all those years? Was I just talking to myself? You look at other people in church and they seem so certain. Their hands raised, their eyes closed, their faces glowing with something you can't remember feeling anymore. And you wonder what's wrong with you. Why everyone else seems to hear Him clearly while you're left standing in a spiritual wasteland, choking on doubt. The worst part isn't the silence itself. It's what the silence makes you believe about yourself. You start thinking you're too broken, too dirty, too far gone, that maybe your sins stacked up so high that God finally looked away. That maybe you exhausted His patience, that maybe this is what it feels like when grace runs out. You replay every mistake, every moment you chose yourself over Him, every time you said you'd change and didn't, and you convince yourself that this silence is the punishment you deserve, that God is teaching you a lesson by withholding His presence, by letting you drown in the consequences of your own rebellion. But here's the brutal truth nobody wants to say out loud. Sometimes God's silence isn't punishment. Sometimes it's protection. Sometimes He goes quiet, not because He's left you, but because the noise of your own fear is so deafening that you wouldn't be able to hear Him even if He shouted. What if the silence isn't empty? What if it's full of a language you haven't learned yet? What if God is speaking, but not in words? What if His answer is in the breath still filling your lungs, in the sun that rose this morning even though you didn't want to wake up, in the fact that you're still here, still fighting, still asking questions even when you're terrified of the answers? God, I'm going to be honest with you in a way I've been too scared to be before. I'm angry. I'm confused. I feel betrayed. I gave you everything I had, and you gave me silence in return. I prayed for miracles, and you gave me waiting. I begged for answers, and you gave me more questions. I asked for your presence, and all I got was this vast, aching emptiness that follows me everywhere I go. I don't understand you anymore. I don't understand why you would create us to need you and then hide when we reach for you. I don't understand why you would call yourself a father and then let your children scream themselves hoarse trying to get your attention. I don't understand how you can be love and still feel so far away when I need you most. But here's what I know. Even in the middle of this darkness, I'm still talking to you. Even now, as I accuse you of silence, I'm not walking away. Even as I question everything, I'm still here. And maybe that's what faith really is. Not the absence of doubt, not the presence of certainty, but the decision to keep showing up even when you don't. Maybe faith isn't about feeling your presence. Maybe it's about trusting you're there, even when every cell in my body screams that I'm alone. Maybe it's not about hearing your voice. Maybe it's about believing you're listening, even when I can't prove it, even when all evidence points to the opposite. Lord, I need you to know something. This silence is killing me. It's eating me alive from the inside out. It's making me question my sanity. It's making me doubt my salvation. It's making me wonder if I ever really knew you at all, or if I just knew a version of you I created in my own image. A comfortable God, a predictable God, a God who showed up on my schedule and answered on my terms. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've been so busy demanding you be who I need you to be that I never stopped to learn who you actually are. Maybe I've been so focused on getting answers that I never learned to sit in the questions. Maybe I've been so terrified of the silence that I never realized you were teaching me to hear differently. What if this season isn't about you being absent? What if you're so close that it terrifies me? What if the silence isn't abandonment, but intimacy? The kind of intimacy that doesn't need words because it goes deeper than language. Think about it. When you sit with someone you truly love, you don't need to fill every second with noise. Sometimes the deepest connection happens in the quiet. Sometimes presence speaks louder than words. Sometimes being there is enough. What if that's what's happening here? What if God is so present that he doesn't need to prove it anymore? What if he's done performing miracles to convince me he exists, and instead he's inviting me into something deeper? Something that doesn't rely on feelings or signs or supernatural confirmation. Something that asks me to trust him not because of what he does, but because of who he is. Jesus, I remember Gethsemane. I remember how you prayed 3 times for the cup to pass, how you sweat blood while your friend slept, how heaven was silent while you begged for another way. And in that moment, even you felt abandoned. Even you cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" So you know what this feels like. You know what it's like to pray and hear nothing back, to be obedient and still suffer, to trust the Father and still feel alone. You know what it's like when faith feels less like certainty and more like clinging to a hope you can barely see. And if you could endure that silence, if you could trust through that darkness, if you could remain faithful even when heaven seemed closed, then maybe I can too. Not because I'm strong, not because I understand, but because you walked this road first, and you promised you'd never leave me to walk it alone. Holy Spirit, I'm asking you to do what I can't, to intercede with groanings too deep for words, to translate this ache in my chest into a language heaven understands, to take this broken, confused, angry faith and somehow make it acceptable, to remind me that even my doubt can be worship if I bring it honestly to the altar. I don't have pretty prayers anymore. I don't have eloquent words or theological precision. All I have is this raw, bleeding need for you to be real, for you to matter, for you to not be silent forever. And if that's not enough, then I have nothing left to offer. But I'm still here, after everything, after the unanswered prayers, after the disappointments, after the nights I wanted to walk away, After the days I couldn't feel you at all, I'm still here. And maybe that's the real miracle. Not that you speak, but that even in the silence, something in me refuses to let go. Something deeper than feelings, something stronger than doubt, something that whispers, even if he doesn't answer, he's still God. Even if he doesn't show up the way I want, he's still worthy of my trust. Even if this silence lasts forever, he's still mine and I'm still his. So here's my declaration, spoken into the void with a voice that still trembles. I will not let this silence define you. I will not let my feelings rewrite your character. I will not let my confusion erase your faithfulness. I will not let this season steal my history with you. You've been too good for too long for me to abandon you now. You've done too much for me to forget when things get hard. You've proven yourself too many times for me to stop believing just because I can't see what you're doing in this moment. And if this silence is a test, then I choose to pass it. Not by having all the answers, not by feeling confident, but by staying, by showing up, by refusing to walk away even when everything in me wants to, by choosing faith not because it makes sense, but because you're worth it. Because even if you never speak another word to me, what you've already said is enough. What you've already done is sufficient. Who you've already proven yourself to be is worthy of my trust. I don't need to understand the silence to survive it. I don't need to hear your voice to know you're listening. I don't need to feel your presence to trust that you're there. Faith isn't about what I can prove. It's about what I choose to believe when there's no proof at all. If you've been praying through silence that feels like death, you're not alone. If you've questioned whether God is even listening anymore, you're not broken. If your faith feels more like warfare than worship right now, you're not abandoned. Comment below, what's the most brutal prayer you've ever prayed? Let this space become holy ground where we stop pretending we have it all together and start being honest about what this journey really costs. Share this if you know someone who's been screaming into the silence and needs to know they're not crazy for still believing. That their doubt doesn't disqualify them, that their anger doesn't disgrace them, that their questions don't separate them from a God who is big enough to handle every single one. The silence doesn't mean God isn't listening. Sometimes it means he's listening so intently that he doesn't want to interrupt what your soul is finally brave enough to say. Sometimes the silence is the answer. Sometimes it's the invitation. Sometimes it's the only way we learn that faith isn't about the noise, it's about who we become in the quiet. Tomorrow, we'll pray for those who have given up hope that prayer even works anymore. For those who have closed their Bibles and walked away. For those who think they've committed the unforgivable. Until then, sit in this truth. Your silence isn't empty. It's full of a God who's too close to need words. After everything, still his name, when your prayers feel like echoes.